What I would say about those who do suicide operations or martyrdom operations, they're completely praiseworthy. If I see Mujahideen attack the UK, I'm always standing with the Muslims.
The banner has been risen for jihad inside the UK, which means for them, it's allowed for them to attack.
These extreme views can be traced back to the radical Islamist organisation Al-Muhajirun, which Newsnight investigated last year.
When they speak about September the 11th, when the two planes magnificently went through those buildings.
Since the London bombings, our footage, filmed last March, has been rebroadcast around the world. We're not suggesting that anyone at this meeting in London's East End took part in the recent suicide attacks, but the sentiments expressed then were a stark warning.
Islam is not the starter of wars. But if you start the war, we will continue. We won't give the other cheek.
And not just only Tony Blair came out, George Bush came out at the same time. What did he say? He said, you're either with us or you're either with the terrorists. And what did we Muslims say? We said, we're not with you, we're with the terrorists. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
6 months after our broadcast, Al-Muhajirun announced it was disbanding. We've now learned that its members have moved on to create two new organisations. One is known as the Saviour Sect, which was involved in violent protests against George Galloway at the recent general election. The Saviour Sect, so named because they believe only their sect represents the true Islamic path, totally rejects democracy and wants Britain to adopt Sharia or Islamic law. The second closely aligned group is known as Al-Ghuraba, Arabic for the strangers. They too want Britain to become part of a worldwide Islamic state, or Khilafah. This man, Abu Izzadeen, describes himself as Al-Ghuraba's spokesman. He says Britain's brought the recent suicide attacks in London on themselves.
Osama bin Laden, Sheikh Osama bin Laden, he offered to the British public and the European people at large an offer of ceasefire. He said if they rose up against the governments, brought the troops home, he promised not to attack them. But unfortunately, the stiff upper British lip, became a bit hard-headed, and we saw what took place on 7th of July.
Abu Izzadeen comes from a Christian Jamaican family living in London. He converted to Islam aged 17. Today, he doesn't want to answer any questions about jihad training or the 7 months he says he spent in Pakistan and Kashmir. The target for the Indian services, and with us tried to tread a careful line. That didn't stop him from expressing views which most people in this country would find abhorrent. Are you willing to denounce right now the London bombings which killed so many people?
No.
Why not?
I would never denounce Muslims.
This was murder.
No. Mujahideen activity.
It's murder. Innocent people died.
I'm sorry, when you bomb Muslims in Afghanistan, and I saw houses, I saw women and children being murdered on a huge scale, not 50, there was carpet bombing in Afghanistan. Nobody called for denunciation of murder of Muslims.
With the view.
See, Africa has a weakness in some understanding. What are those who do suicide operations or martyrdom operations? Because suicide is a term coined in the media. They're completely praiseworthy. Martyrdom operations are commonplace. 15 every day in Iraq.
Not in Britain.
Against the British and Americans. Every day in Afghanistan. All around the world in Palestine. So it's not something that's unusual. What's shocking for many is that it took place on their own doorsteps. But hopefully, that will make many wake up and, smell the coffee.
Magnificently.
Remember the man we filmed last year describing 9/11 as magnificent? Then he believed terrorists shouldn't attack the UK because it offered hospitality to Muslims.
Because you know why? We don't live in peace with you anymore, which means the doesn't no longer exist.
But that essentially means that British subjects are targets.
Yeah, that's right. That's why those 4 bombers that attacked, they believed that there was no covenant of security, and for them, their belief was it was allowed to attack the UK.
It can't be right, surely. It can't be right.
For them, it was allowed. For them, it was particularly allowed. Because myself, my belief hasn't been attacked personally myself. For them, the banner has been risen for jihad inside the UK, which it's allowed for them to attack. And they've probably got many other cells inside the UK.
Many other terrorist cells?
You could call them terrorist cells. I could call them Muslim cells.
Many people say we shouldn't negotiate with terrorists. It's a common theme put in the media. But I'm sure if you ask those who passed away on the 7th of July, should we negotiate with Osama
How do you view
bring them back to save themselves from the burning inferno underground? They would have said, let's negotiate.
The problem for society is that Islamists, even those born in Britain, fundamentally disagree with the central tenets of democracy.
There's always a clash of civilizations, there's always a clash of ideals. And because Islam is not written by a man, I can't change it. But because democracy is written by a man, they can change it to accommodate the Muslims. I'm born here, I have the right to call for Islam wherever I am. And that's the problem for many inside the British society and establishment, that the community here, the new generation of Muslims, are born in the UK. We have a British passport, a British citizenship, but our allegiance is only to Islam.
If you had information that there was going to be another bombing in London, would you go to the police?
I would never go to the police.
Why not?
Never ever go
You're
to
a British
the
citizen?
Because I believe that to spy on Muslims is particularly not allowed at all.
You're a British citizen.
I'm a British citizen, but I'm Muslim first, and I'm Muslim second, and I'm Muslim last.
But don't you see that as completely incompatible with being a British citizen?
Yeah, but the thing is, I don't believe, even if I'm British, okay, I don't follow the values of the UK, I follow the Islamic values.
That's the key point. Where is your allegiance first, Islam or Britain?
There's no issue of first and second. I have no allegiance to the British Queen whatsoever, and to British society. In fact, if I see Mujahideen attack the UK, I'm always standing with the Muslims. Never against the Muslims.
You wouldn't denounce that?
Never. Even if my own family was to be suffered inside attacks. Because we always stand with the Muslims, regardless of the consequences.
Democracy, they argue, is a man-made system, and therefore haram, or banned under Islamic law.
You, as I understand it, think it would be justifiable to overthrow a democratically elected government to establish that Khalifa?
Well, of course. And what's the problem with that?
Well, it's a huge problem.
The British government are willing to overthrow Muslims inside Afghanistan, to kill and rape and murder, to establish a democratic system. If the British public don't like Sharia, it's going to be over their noses, whether they like it or not. It's going to be over Tony Blair's nose and George Bush's nose as well. And for your information, the British government knows that. That's why they're so terrified of the Islamists. I don't believe in freedom. Because freedom is an absolute term. And your freedom encroaches on my freedom. We don't believe in freedom as Muslim. We believe we are, and every action is restricted with the Sharia rules.
So I'm saying clearly I don't want to live in a society like that. What do you say?
You don't want to live in the Sharia? Well, when it comes, I'm sure you'll change your minds.
At its height, Al-Harun probably had fewer than 1,000 activists. But as the new organisation, Al-Gharaba's leaders now imply, it only takes a handful of extremists to threaten democracy and national security.